That's how we grow. That's how we develop in our faith with one another. Is to engage with each other, and we grow in our relationships with one another. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But so a couple things going on right now. If you missed the announcements, we have a Christmas fundraising project that's going on through December 20th, I believe. And so check out our website later this week for more information on what we are doing. But two major things we're doing: we're raising funds for a new stove for Oasis Dufferin Community Center. They prepare about 60 to 70 meals a week. That's a lot of meals per day. 60 to 70 meals per week. And current stove is running out, so we wanted to gift them with that because they're doing tremendous work in the community. The second thing we want to do is collect donations for personal items and food items. And so check that out on the website, or we'll send some more information to you guys out on that. Other big news is lockdowns are happening back at midnight tonight in Toronto and Peel region, which is where we are. And it's going to affect our church because now the restrictions are for maximum 10 people to be in the building starting next week. And so we have 5 people who are serving on worship and tech, which means we have room for 5 spaces here in the building. So if you are interested in continuing to attend, you just let me know after service if you're here, or if you are at home, just contact the church during the week. We'll put together a list, and we'll give further instructions on how we can maneuver it. If there are less than 5 people who are interested in continuing to come out, then we have no problem. But if we have more, we'll probably do some type of rotation or something like that. So stay tuned later this week on that. And it's things are changing, and it looks like numbers are worse, getting higher and higher. But in spite of everything, God is still in control of all things, and no need to fear or be afraid of anything. But we continue to be wise and careful, but also be out in confidence and boldness, knowing that ultimately our lives are in the hands of God. And so stay encouraged, everybody. Stay encouraged. Well, there's another news item out there for the past couple weeks, and it's all over the media. I wish it was positive news about the church, but Hillsong Church in New York, the pastor of that branch, we can say, was caught having an affair during the summer, during the pandemic, basically. Met this woman back in May at a park in New York, and they had a 5-month affair, and he got caught. Immediately got fired from the church, and apparently there's an investigation going on now inside of the inner workings of Hillsong New York, and it's pretty sad to see, when a church leader falls from grace like that, and especially someone who supposedly had influence with so-called celebrities, who he's noted for having baptized Justin Bieber. If you guys follow the Biebs, I don't know why I said that. Sorry. And a lot of other, so-called celebrities that he supposedly knew. And now apparently he's in LA with his family trying to rectify things. Who knows? Who knows? But one of the things he said, he got caught first, and then he wrote a confession on Instagram a day later. And, God knows his heart. But something that struck me, what he said, was that, I'm paraphrasing here, something about not taking care of his soul and letting it just kind of go on and for a long time. And, when we deal with life in isolation, when I say isolation, it's not just physical isolation, because you could be around people and still be isolated. You could be around lots of people and still be isolated, because you're not letting anybody inside of your life, nor are you connecting with others. So when we deal with life in isolation, this is what happens: is we get we fall into temptation, we fall into foolish situations. Especially when there's a trial, or when we're experiencing tragedy, or coming out of tragedy in our lives. When we're in isolation, it makes things very difficult. We're weak. We're already in a weak setting. And then to deal with that on our own, well, we fall. And a trial or tragedy right now is obviously the COVID-19 pandemic, right? This is something that's kind of just been hovering over us. And it's not over yet. In fact, we're kind of entering some dark times right now, with December coming up, and the weather getting colder, and all of that stuff, the numbers rising, and it's going to be a difficult winter. There's talk about a vaccine, but we don't know exactly what's going to happen, and the time frame for the vaccine to be distributed and all of that stuff, we don't know until it's going to happen. And I think it's wise for us to be prepared for this coming winter. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be easier to be in isolation, to remove ourselves from others, and to not connect with others. Well, we have a better example of how to deal with trial and tragedy in our lives, better than Carl Lentz, who was the pastor of Hillsong, New York. The better example who we have is Ruth, the person, or the person whose name is the title of the book that we've been studying for the past couple weeks. Ruth is the better example for us in dealing with tragedy. And so we're looking at chapter 3 today, and I'm going to read it for us as we begin here. But chapter 3, Ruth chapter 3. We'll read it for us. It's quite a lengthy text, and we'll get into it. Ruth chapter 3. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight, he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "His kindness is greater than that which you have shown earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people in my town knew that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night. In the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until the morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. And he said, no one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor. He also said, bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out. When she did so, he poured it into 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi, Naomi asked, how did it go, my daughter? Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her and added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today. Let's pray. Well, Lord, we come before you right now, seeking your wisdom, seeking your help and your strength. We ask right now as we continue this time together in looking at your word, that you would give us a mindset and a heart and an attitude to receive your word this morning. Pray in your name. Amen. Well, if you know anything about stories, I love a good story. You know, I like reading a book or watching a movie, and Netflix is probably, people are all just like Netflixed out right now because it's too much Netflix. But I love a good story. There have been some pretty good movies out there lately. But if you know anything about a story, there are some common elements to a story. And there are usually about 4 or 5 parts to a story. Well, first you have the introduction, which includes the conflict. There's usually a story involves some sort of conflict, right? There is an introduction of the characters, some background that's given, and whatever the conflict is, it's given. So in the movie Gladiator, for example, classic movie from 2000, you're introduced to some of the major characters. And Maximus is the main character, who was a soldier in the Roman army and a dedicated friend and follower of Marcus Aurelius. But the conflict is that he gets sold into slavery. And so it's like, okay, what's going to happen? Does he rise above it or does he fall? Right? Well, the second part is the rising action. You got the introduction and the conflict in the beginning, then you have the rising action. And the rising action is the majority of the movie where you're taken from situation to situation. Right? Not yet the climax, but you're taken from situation to see what happens. And it's all the stuff that takes us to the top of the mountain, basically. Then you have the climax, right, which is the intense part where the resolution happens, or what we find out how this conflict is addressed. And then finally, 4, we have the falling action, and so it kind of tidies up the pieces together. And then you have the 5th part, which is the resolution and conclusion. And so there are some movies that don't have a resolution or conclusion. You know what I'm talking about? Or some stories that don't have a resolution or conclusion. It kind of just ends, and you're just like, oh, come on, give me some sort of resolution. I hate that. I want to, at least if it's a 5 or 10 minute or whatever, short period of, okay, I want to see how people in this story end up. This part of the story in Ruth 3, Ruth 2 as well, but in Ruth 3 is the rising action part, the second part, where we have these series of events that lead up. The conflict was, right, the introduction conflict in chapter 1 was the fact that Naomi, her husband, her two sons, move, settle their life in Moab. The father dies, the two sons die. Three women are left without husbands and a father. That's the conflict. And now, there's this conflict that happens. And so, if we stop there, it'd be a sad story. But there are now a series of events that happen. We want to know what happens. What happens to Naomi and Ruth and Orpah? And we don't know what happens to Orpah, actually. Okay, that's something that we could go to heaven one day, and it will be one of the questions that we can ask and find out. You know, we find out about Ruth and Naomi. But what happened to Orpah? We don't know. But we want to find out what happened. What happens? Does Ruth end up meeting someone else and getting remarried? Does she remain a widow the rest of her life? Does she go off to another country to be a missionary of sorts or whatever? You know, or the equivalent of one in the ancient times? And what we've just read here is really interesting. The lesson that we encounter in this chapter, from the rising action to lead us to the climax, is what? Well, the last chapter was continuing to do what we're supposed to be doing, right? Last week, in Ruth chapter 2. The lesson that we looked at was that regardless of tragedy, regardless of what is going on in our lives, we have to continue to do what we are supposed to be doing, right? To do the right thing. Well, this week it's about reliance as a means of moving forward from tragedy. What we see from Ruth's example is that she relies on others. And so we focus on the character of Ruth today. She's in this difficult situation. She's widowed, she's poor, doesn't have any opportunities for job, security, finances. And she's an immigrant. She's underprivileged in almost every category. And yet, she relies on others in moving forward from this tragedy that she incurred. And what this means for us right now is that if we're going to rise out of tragedy, we're not going to do it alone. Life is not meant to be lived alone, but in community with others. Others whom we trust and who trust us. This is hard for us right now, right? Because we are isolated. And those of us in Toronto and Peel region, now that there's more, we've gone down a stage to lockdown, we're told to be physically isolated. So it makes it even more challenging. But we can still connect with one another. And so how we can persevere through tragedy, we'll see from the example of Ruth as we rely on others. Now there are 5 of these, and so pick one or two that is the most challenging for you. Some of us are gifted in various different ways from each other. Some of us have strengths that others don't have. Some of us have weaknesses that others don't have. And so as we go through these 5 points, pick one or two that is the most challenging for you. Okay, number 1. First of all, if we're going to persevere through tragedy, by relying on others, we're going to have to trust the right people. Trust the right people. Well, verse 1, it begins. It says, One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you." Now, it begins by saying one day, but in the Hebrew, the original language of Ruth, it doesn't say one day. This is an English translation which is interpretive. We're not sure exactly how much time passes between chapter 2 and chapter 3. At the end of chapter 2, we see that Ruth got a job, or she got the only job that she could get, getting the leftover grains that they were harvesting. There was Israelite law that made provisions for people like her to make a living. And she meets Boaz, and Boaz promotes her to a regular gatherer. And then Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "Hey, I got to set you up," she says. I don't think too much time passed between chapter 2 and chapter 3. It doesn't seem like that in the Hebrew narrative here. And so, say shortly thereafter, Naomi says, "I got to set you up. Okay, I'm not going to live forever. You can't live with me forever. We've got to find you a more stable and secure family." And in this context, and in many contexts throughout the world, actually, they're used to arranged marriages, which is the situation here. Naomi feels, she is essentially her mother, even though technically she's her mother-in-law. She feels a responsibility towards Ruth, and so she wants the best for Ruth. So she says, "You know what? This is nice. It's nice having you here. But we got to find a man for you. We got to find a husband." And she thinks of Boaz. He says, "You're working for Boaz right now. He is a good man. He was single. He's a relative. He's a guardian redeemer," which we talked about last week. We'll get into that more. "Make yourself pretty," she says, right, in verse 3. "Wash, put on perfume, take a shower, right? Smell nice, wear some nice clothes, go down to the threshing floor," and gives a series of instructions. And Ruth says, I will do it. Okay. But what this shows us, first of all, is that Naomi's intentions were for Ruth, for her benefit. She loved Ruth. Ruth did a great, tremendous thing for her in coming with her back to Bethlehem. And so Naomi wants the best for her. There was this mutual relationship of trust between them. I was a youth pastor for a long time, as you know, and we take the youth group to retreats every summer and winter. And one of the team building activities that I like to do, especially more in the summer, but winter too, but we take the group out into the forest and pair them up. And we would say, okay, one of you is going to put on a blindfold, and the other one is going to lead the other person through the woods to the finish line. There's a kind of a trail that you have to meet us back, and whichever team has the most people to come in first wins the prize. Or it was like a little competition that we had. And I've done this before when I was a youth as well. And let me tell you, being the blindfolded person is not fun, because you are at the mercy of your partner. You are at their mercy because you're blindfolded. You can't see. And one time I was partnered with a friend of mine who thought it would be funny to lead me in wrong directions into a tree stump, and so, you had to do this. But you're holding the person's hand, you're leading them. And so it really matters who you're partnered up with, if you trust them or not. Kind of the situation in life where sometimes we're blindfolded by life, and we've got to partner with the right person, the person who we trust will help us to get to a better place rather than lead us to a worse place. Someone that we trust. We got to trust the right people. And sometimes we don't know this. I can imagine some of the church members of Hillsong, New York, And when this news came out, all of the all the celebrity forums, it was even on like the news of his affair, of his adultery. How embarrassing, right? But I can just imagine the church members who put their trust in their pastor and then was just betrayed. I mean, let alone his wife and the kids. Sometimes we don't know, and that we have to when we put our trust in somebody, we don't know if they're trustworthy. And all of us are fallen, right? So we're not perfect. We're gonna let each other down to an extent, but it's finding the right people to trust in, the people who have your back, the people who have your best interest for us. For Ruth, it was her mother-in-law. She trusted Naomi. Naomi said to do all these things. Ruth said, okay, I'll do whatever you say because I trust you. For us, could be our parents, our in-laws, but maybe some of us may not have trustworthy parents. Could be our spouses. Hopefully you trust your spouse. Could be our friends, our fellow church members here. Could be mentors, etc. That video that we just saw right before this with the young adult mentoring the youth, right? That's so important for us, no matter what our ages are, to be connected to help each other. And this kid trusts his mentor. And so we got to trust the right people. It takes discernment, it takes prayer. But that's the first step. Second, we want to persevere through tragedy, is listen well. We have to listen well. And in verse 5, it says, I will do whatever you say, Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. We got to listen well to the people that we trust. This verse could probably be a thesis statement of chapter 3. I will do whatever you say. And Ruth did everything Naomi told her to do. Now, Ruth didn't get defensive. She didn't say, wash? I don't want to wash. That's bad, but put on perfume. I don't want to, I'm above that. I don't need to wear perfume for a man. She didn't say that. Get dressed in my best clothes? No, I'm not going to do that. Why should I have to dress in my best clothes? She didn't say that. Why do I have to go down I don't have strength to go down to the threshing floor. She didn't say that either. She says, I will do whatever you say. And this is kind of related to the next point, but it took a lot of courage for Ruth to do all this stuff, by the way. Naomi says in verse 4, when he lies down, know the place where he's lying, go uncover his feet and lie down. Think about that for a second. Your mother-in-law is telling you, go to this man, he's actually your boss. When he lies down, uncover his feet. Try doing that sometime. Don't try that. Go to your boss's house when he's sleeping, find a way to get inside and uncover his feet. And then just kind of sit there and stare at him. That's weird. If someone told me to do that, I'd just be like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. That's weird. But Ruth does it. Well, because back to the first point, she trusted Naomi. And two, she listened well. I often go to a few friends when I want to run something by them. I have different friends I like to think they have different sets of expertises. Friend A is good at A, and friend B is good at B, and friend C is good at C. And if I just need like encouragement, for example, I won't go to friend A because he's not that good at encouraging, but he's really good at analyzing a situation. So if I'm like kind of unsure about something, whatever, that's what I do. So I go to this one friend. He's a very wise guy, not a wise guy, but he's a very wise person, and is very discerning. So I trust him. Remember, just this past summer, I said, hey, I got to run something by you. Can we talk? So we talked. I told him the situation. He gave me his advice. And what did I do? I said, but you're not, okay, you're not understanding. Okay, I started to argue with him a little bit. I didn't listen well, but I said, I don't like that. I don't like what you're saying. And here are the reasons why what you're saying is not right. What happened was he just said, all right, I'm done with this. You asked me for my advice. I gave it to you. If you don't want it, that's fine, but don't argue with me. And I said, okay. And then I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, he's right. Why did I get so defensive? I thought about it, and then my logic returned to me, and I said, he is a guy that I trust with my life. Why did I do that? I didn't listen well. I apologized afterwards. I said, yeah, you're right. I should have just listened to you. And even if I disagreed, I should have still listened anyways and not argue. We're coming out of a tragedy, coming out of a trial. We're by nature weakened. We don't have the strength in and of ourselves, and so we have to link up with others. And they may not be, they're probably not in a similar situation, so we need to rely on their strength and wisdom. And so we have to listen to others. We have to listen to their counsel, their advice, their wisdom, especially those we trust, right? Number 3, so trust the right people, number 1. Number 2, listen well. Number 3, be courageous. Rising out of tragedy involves being courageous. Verse 7. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far side of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. And in the middle of the night, something startled him. Yeah, there was a strange person lying next to his feet. That's what startled him. Now it says Boaz laid down to sleep on the grain pile, and he was on the threshing floor. Those of us in the city, if you're a city person like I am, read this initially and like, oh, I don't know what this is talking about. Well, in those agricultural days, especially when that was a pre-industrial age, they would gather the grains, and they would put them together, and there would be this threshing floor, this flat surface. Sometimes it was either indoors or outdoors, but it would be this huge flat surface where they would separate the grains, the edible grain, from the straw that was attached to it. There's a way to straw, and then the wind would blow the straw away so that you're left with what you need, that edible part of the grain. That's what the threshing floor is, where they did that. And now there are machines to do that, but back then they would have oxen or some other animal to step on the grains to separate it. And it took a while for that process to happen, but that's what they would do on a daily basis. Collect the grains, put them on the threshing floor, have them threshed. And Boaz, maybe he was working late that night, but He was there and he slept on the threshing floor. And Ruth, who trusted in Naomi and who listened to her, did exactly what she told her, and she lay down at his feet and uncovered his feet. Now, again, think about this. It took a lot of courage for Ruth to do that. Number one, of her social status. She wasn't very high on the social status. She was an older woman too, comparatively in those ages. And she did this to a man who was of high stature, was of high status. It takes courage sometimes when we're rising out of tragedy, right? It takes courage. Some of us, understandably, maybe have been paralyzed by this virus, that don't very nervous in leaving the home, actually, even. That's okay. It's understandable. And it takes courage to step out of your comfort zone with that. It takes courage. Not to be foolish, obviously. Relying on others takes courage. Because, especially those of us who are control freaks, right? You know what I'm talking about? If you're a control freak, raise your hand. You want to be in control. You feel safe when you are in control of the situation. So you're the person that wants to always drive everybody. I'm driving. Because you don't want to because when you're getting in the car of someone else, you're at their mercy, right? And if they're a bad driver, you have no control over that. Especially for those of us who are like that, it takes courage to rely on others. Those of us who are more self-sufficient, who've been doing things alone, it takes courage to rely on others and trust that God is not only working in you, but He is working in others as well. And He is working through others as well. So be courageous. Which one of these so far is challenging to you? Number 4 is show integrity. Show integrity. Verse 10, "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. Well, he says this, Boaz says this, because Ruth had just revealed herself to him, right? In verse 9. He's like, who are you? It's dark. He was sleeping, and so his eyes are a little fuzzy. Who are you? He says, "I'm your servant Ruth." He says, "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." She's basically asking him, indirectly, she's asking him, redeem me. Now, the guardian redeemer, we talked about this last week, I think, right? Guardian redeemer, it was some sort of system. We're not sure exactly what the system was, but if there was a person in need, they could be redeemed by a relative who was in the position of guardian redeemer. And it looks like they had few people in that kind of situation. A relative could come and redeem that person. So they would be brought into their own family. Someone who experienced a tragedy in their life, someone who maybe had lost a job, could be redeemed. And here Ruth is saying, hey, since you are one of our guardian redeemers, I'm asking you to redeem me. And in some ways, she's asking him to marry her. Which in this culture, I mean, even in today's culture, even in Western cultures, it's usually the man that asks the woman to marry him. But this is quite different here. So again, it's courage, but there's integrity here too. "The Lord bless you," he says in verse 10. This kindness is great. He says, "My daughter." And this is just a way, it's just a term that they used, right? Just like brother doesn't literally mean brother, but a friend. And so, it says, "The Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than which you showed earlier." He interprets this act as kindness. "You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor." Now, Boaz was probably a lot older than Ruth, even if Ruth was advanced in age. She wasn't a young woman. She wasn't an old woman. But Boaz was probably older as well. Maybe a few grays, in the beard and the hair and stuff like that. Boaz is like, hey, you didn't go after the young men out there, who are in better shape, healthier, whatever else it is. You came to me. And he is grateful for it. And then Boaz says, there's another guardian redeemer who is closer. And he kind of has the first rights, so to speak. He's prioritized in this situation. He says, I'm going to ask him, though, if he wants to redeem you. If he doesn't, I'm going to do it. And so he then says, Ruth, stay for the night. It's too late to go back home. And you can leave in the morning when the sun rises. And so she sleeps at his feet. Now, some commentators, this is an interesting part of the story, right? Because they slept together, so to speak. And some commentators or some preachers will say that they actually had sex that night. It's kind of more of a recent interpretation. Now I read this passage and I say, where does it say that? It doesn't say that. This is just so that people, to spark some kind of reaction or to be controversial maybe. But I believe, because Ruth had integrity, she was a person of integrity. It even says in verse, where are we? She's, I just lost. Okay, in verse 11, all the people in my town know that you are a woman of noble character. And Boaz had a reputation of being a noble person as well. And so I believe that they kept their integrity that night, and all she did was sleep next to his feet. And they slept separately that night. But she left early to avoid gossip, to avoid getting a bad reputation, for people's creative minds start going, right? To protect each other's reputations here. When we rise above tragedy, even within trials, we got to hold on to our integrity. We have to hold on to our integrity and show integrity. And if we're going to rise above it, we have to have integrity. This is what Carl Lentz, Hillsong New York pastor, failed to do because he was alone, he was isolated. He didn't connect with his wife. He was wandering the streets of New York and saw a woman and approached her. He didn't have mentors surrounding him. He didn't have his group of maybe brothers to keep him accountable. And so these are all interrelated. Showing integrity means we trust the right people, we listen well, we're courageous. It takes courage, by the way, to open up to others, to show them not only the good aspects of ourselves, but the bad the negative aspects. It takes courage. Because you might wonder, well, what if they see us? What if they judge us? What if they lose respect for us? What if they disapprove? And finally, number 5, rise out of tragedy. Like Ruth, we have to wait. Number 5, wait. Well, morning comes, Ruth goes back home. She has a bunch of barley that Boaz gifted her with. Don't go empty-handed. Here's barley. Huge 6 measures of barley. And Naomi says, good. Glad that happened. I kind of saw it coming, she said, but good. Now wait. She says, wait. Now, here, Ruth only had to wait 1 day, which is not bad. 1 day. Because she says, wait, my daughter, in verse 18, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today. Man will not rest until the matter is settled today. It says, wait, my daughter. Wait for the resolution. This is one of the hardest things to do in life, I think, is waiting. I mean, we've been waiting for 8 months for this pandemic to be over. Right? If you're like me, when March 10th or 11th or 12th, whatever that date was, when it was officially declared a pandemic, and then our city, province, nation, the world locked down, we thought 2 weeks, I can't wait 2 weeks. It'll be over. We all go back to normal. And then fast forward 8 months later, that's 32 weeks later, we're still in this, and it looks like there's no end to it. Waiting is hard. It's difficult. Especially when you don't know what's going to happen next. I remember when I got tested back in September. So I had a few symptoms. It wasn't as bad as others, but I was waiting outside for a couple hours because the line went outside. And I had my phone with me. I was like reading different articles online and stuff. Then my battery went to like 15%, so I was like, dang it! Should have charged my phone. So I put away my phone just in case I had to send a text or whatever I needed to use my phone, so I put it away. I just stood there. I was waiting. It's hard. What do you do? I mean, we're just in this constant state of waiting. But waiting is not passive. I've mentioned this already many times. Waiting is not passive, it's active. Waiting is actively pursuing God. Is actively trusting. Is actively being patient. Actively persevering. And sometimes waiting means that we occupy ourselves with something else that's productive while we wait for the outcome of something else. Perseverance means that we have to wait. And when we're coming out of a tragedy, sometimes we have to wait to get the full effect of it. We have to be prepared for what's coming in the next few months. You know, if you're like me and you saw the reports of a vaccine, it's 90% effective or 95% effective or 94.5% effective. Government bought over 2 million doses of this vaccine from Pfizer. Well, we have, 16 million people in Ontario? Something like that. So, still a long way to go with this. And this winter is going to be tough. It's going to be tough for all of us. We have to be prepared. We're still in the midst of this tragedy happening. But the way we can be prepared is in our minds to know that this is going to happen and to be on top of it. So which of these, I'm going to ask you, which of these are the most challenging for you? Trusting the right people. We have a hard time. Maybe we've been burnt by people we trusted in the past. Maybe people have constantly let us down. It's understandable. We have a hard time listening well to accept what people tell us. Is courage a challenge for us? Stepping out of our comfort zones. Integrity, showing integrity, is that a challenge for us? Putting that at the forefront of our minds. And waiting, is that a challenge for us? Waiting on God. All of this, in all of this, it's about relying on others and doing life together. Those of us who are in isolation, I encourage you, strongly encourage you, not to continue forward alone. This is what church is about. We come together, we help each other, we walk with each other, we pray together, we weep together, we rejoice together, but we do it together. But you have to move outside of your comfort zone in that. You know, some of us have the gift of encouragement. Use it this season. Use it this season to encourage someone who might need it. Well, next week is our final week in the series, Ruth chapter 4. We have the climax and the resolution. Climax, following action, resolution. Find out what happens to Ruth. Of course, you can read ahead and find out for yourself earlier if you haven't done so already. This is where we are today. And so as we close with this, that God is with us. He will never leave us nor forsake us. That He also wants us to be with one another and help each other out. Let's pray.